Are you aware that there's civil liability that attaches if you don't provide them within 5 days?
I am, and there are also exemptions, and one of the exemptions is that if there is a counsel, if there's a lawyer for that agency, then they can take whatever is a reasonable time to go through that lawyer.
You're sure that NRS 239 states that?
No, the NAC does.
And that's an exception to the 5-day requirement?
It's you might call it a safe harbor.
Isn't the only exception under NRS 239 the public records request law, specifically that if it's a confidential document, then it would take longer than that?
Yes, sir, but here's the problem. The problem is that generally speaking, on a real life basis, the administrator always seeks review of counsel. And a lot has to do with who it is that's requesting it, and a lot has to do with, is it a hot button item? This was a hot button item.
Because there was liability that potentially attached with John Linetti, right? There was an
No.
adverse interest
No,
between
it was-
Virgin Valley
it was
Water
a-
District and John Linetti.
It was a hot button item for the very reason of all of the publicity that you put into this record in your exhibit. Okay, it was clearly a very high profile situation. And if there was a way for us to get something quicker, why would I want to go through a public records?
Those were from articles in May of 2011, right?
Yes, sir.
So at that point, basically everybody knew that there was adverse interest between John Linetti and Virgin Valley Water District.
I didn't know it, okay, but whoever reads, see, I don't read the newspaper. Because I represent newspapers, and I know the disparity between reality and what they print. But clearly the people out in Mesquite, where we would have had to go to seek some of this stuff, they knew about it.
Because Mr. Zarnowski asked you about this, I just want to make sure the record's clear on this.
Yes.
You don't know anything at all about that lawsuit that was filed that he asked you about in that email, correct?
Sure I do, I read it.
Are you aware that a counterclaim has been filed by me for defamation?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that you did anything wrong, he asked me a question.
Okay.
And Clark Bingham is a guy that I represented on 2 securities fraud cases, which is why I thought you might be related.
So you don't know anything about that case, correct?
Which case? Your case?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Just one moment, Your Honor. Judge, that's all we have for this week.
Nothing further? Okay, I've got a couple questions for you. All right, let's look at Exhibit R. Give your notes.
Oh, okay, my notes.
All right, that first page of your notes, which is again R,
Yes.
about halfway down. There's a notation in there, which has been read, but I'm going to reread it now. Banish GC from creation until 1.5 years ago. I took that your testimony, of course, was, Mr. Gentile, that when you're meeting with Mr. Banish on June 21st, and these are notes from
2011.
2011. These notes are contemporaneous with the meeting, and so that's Banish General Counsel from creation until 1.5 years ago, right?
Right.
And you circle, it appears to me, 17 years as General Counsel.
Yeah, I did the math.
Okay. So the question I have is, you testified, I believe, that it was specifically June 21st, right then and there when you're meeting with Mr. Banish, that it was first that you realized, internalized, or knew that he was General Counsel for 17 years for the Virgin Valley Water District.
That's when I learned.
Is that right?
That's when I learned. I learned at that meeting.
So I take it then, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is it just a coincidence that Mr. Banish was retained? In other words, a coincidence in that he just happened to have been counsel for the Virgin Valley Water District for 17 years. It just coincidental that he was the lawyer that you were utilizing as a potential consultant or expert on water rights?
Actually, I didn't know until the 21st.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was clearly a coincidence. I mean, I knew that George Benish was a water rights lawyer, and I knew that George Benish had done work, my understanding, all over the state.
All right, and the reason I asked that, of course, is there's been a lot made today about the fact that on June 23rd, which was a few days after the meeting, that a proposed civil complaint was provided to you. But that's well and good, but let me tell you what I think is more important than that. What I think is more important than that is that it's been established that Mr. Linetti and you met on June 1st, 2011. He had hired you and you met with Mr. Linetti on June 1st, 2011, right?
That's correct.
Which would have been 20 days before the meeting that you have with Benish.
That's correct.
So the question, I think it's a fair one, I just want to ask you, is when Mr. Benish then informs you on June 21st that, hey, I was general counsel for Virgin Valley Water District for 17 years, did it ever occur to you that maybe you could have, it's just a question, advise Mr. Benish that there's an adverse interest as between his prior client, the Virgin Valley Water District, and your client, Mr. Linetti?
Judge, I don't have a specific recall, but I can tell you that we probably did address it at some point in time. I mean, he knew, I wasn't calling him because of some hunger that I had in the abstract to learn about water rights. Okay. But did I say to him that he may have a conflict of interest? No.
Well, here's what I'm getting at. Mr. Benish testified that he was not aware at the time that he met with you on June 21st, that Mr. Benish was not aware of any adverse interest between Linetti and Benish's former client, the Virgin Valley Water District. That was what Mr. Benish came in on the phone anyway under oath and told us. If I assume that that's true, when Mr. Benish tells me under oath that when he met with you on June 21st that Mr. Benish did not have it in his attorney head that there was an adverse interest as between Linetti and his prior client, the Water District. Okay, I need to figure out though, at any point was he advised during the meeting that there may be such an adverse interest?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think I really embraced that concept at that point in time. I mean, I was there to get I had him there to give me a general education. And I don't see anything wrong with somebody who was once general counsel giving you a general education. Now, if we, you know, I could tell you this, I steered away from any kind of a question that in my mind would have caused him